Hello and welcome to Revision Tips for SIPS Level 6, Professional Diploma in Procurement and Supply. This is Module 3, Global Strategic Supply Chain Management, Learning Outcome 4, which is to understand and apply methods to measure, improve and optimise supply chain performance, which covers the impact of supply chain on corporate performance, the methods to measure and to improve and optimise your supply chain performance, the tools and techniques that are available for us to achieve strategic fit, and the challenges to achieving and maintaining that strategic fit. Now, modern global supply chains and extended supply partners are really complex. They require procurement to balance competing demands to deliver a quick response while managing lead times in our extended supply chains. And just-in-time operations and managing lengthened and times and unreliable logistics is also necessary, I suppose, to eliminate stock and waste within the operation, but trying to manage the cost and complexity of handling multiple partners. So organisations tend to focus on creating value in one aspect, like, I don't know, demand fulfilment, but neglecting the others. But the goal to fulfill demand often means that businesses focus on day-to-day issues rather than the product to the customer. Little time is spent on developing and renewing the processes that create value in the supply chain. Now, 3 strategies that can be used to ensure value-added outcomes is for our people, technology, and process. So people, develop the right competencies in the team. That's not going to be limited to the supply chain, it's the whole organisation. And when it comes to technology, this is becoming increasingly important. Having the ability to automate helps us to streamline our processes and connect organisations to their customers more effectively. With real-time data exchange, faster access to information, better decision-making, flexibility, and order handling. And then from a process perspective, aim for processes that lead to consistency and timeliness of the delivery of goods and service. Maybe change from a manual to an automated process. But supply chains have the potential to affect overall corporate performance as they provide customer value and shareholder value. And these are a means to deliver demand fulfillment objectives. So customer value, this is when an organisation provides value in 5 fronts: the product itself, the features and benefits, as well as the finished goods, marketing to the product to provide information that helps our customers make decisions, the place, getting orders to and from the right place, that's accessible, the timeliness, the quality. And to deliver customer value, a business needs to work on how all of these 5 issues work together. And shareholder value goes beyond cost control. Supply chains should add value to the organisation's income statement, thereby creating value for shareholders. So some ways they can do that might be to increase their turnover, reduce their costs, or control inventories to minimise any issues, I suppose, in the supply chain. And then demand fulfillment, every business is going to develop competencies within the supply chain to fulfill its demand goals. They need to be in a position to offer superior and inexpensive products in the fastest way to satisfy the customer. Management reporting systems are used to collect, filter and analyse data to provide the appropriate data to inform our business decisions. Reports used to enable senior management to analyse and understand the problems and identify the most effective solution that will allow the business to maintain its competitive advantage. So the characteristics of timely reporting of data to senior management stakeholders comes from the in-depth analysis, accurate and up-to-date information, allowing deeper analysis of problems and opportunities. The decision making is the reliable information leading to high quality business decisions. The benchmarking, accurate comparisons against the competitors. Control and monitoring, effective control and monitoring to uncover any misstatements and address the problem areas. And then problem solving would be identifying the source of problems occurring in the supply chain to develop effective solutions. Stability is a clear understanding of your current financial position. Responsiveness, the ability to align business strategies and operational activities in response to the customer demands. And some of the challenges that organisations face in reporting include the failure to identify the right system for that reporting, the use of improper metrics, issues with data integrity, and differentiating reports for different senior managers and stakeholders. Now, a new tool that supports business to overcome the challenges is something called business intelligence, or BI. You might have heard of the term Power BI, for example. And technology is a technologically based system which collects, processes, and analyzes data to provide information to support the senior managers. It's very high level. So that leap forward that data and analytics can take as a result of improvements in computer systems, power and storage, has noted there are several trends that are resulting from the ability to report timely data. You've got the data gap. Apparently, only 30% of potential value of data and analytics identified in 2011 has been captured, with new opportunities arising since, meaning the data gap between leaders and laggards has widened. You've got the organisational barriers in being able to assess data and incorporate the insights gained into our day-to-day operations. That's a big challenge. Competitive advantage. New business models are being created as a result of data networks and digital platforms. That's changing due to the nature of competition. The corporate asset is where data is critical and its value is linked to the organisation's ability to use it through data analytics. Data is disrupting industries, breaking down organisational silos and creating new insights, which match buyers and sellers in real time. And then the machine learning is the systems themselves can contribute to improvements in customer service and the management of our logistics and productivity gains without any intervention of human beings. Unfortunately, that may lead to job losses as a result of increased automation. There are a number of benefits that data analytics can offer a procurement professional. You've got insight and efficiency from things like global position systems, GPS, or radio frequency ID, RFID. These provide us navigation services and location-based applications. And they give us something called geospatial data. So we can track our assets, our products, our transport. Customer demands, we can look at transactions and behaviour data. Obviously, that can support the matching of supply and demand to help us reduce inventories and eliminate waste, leading to improved productivity and higher levels of profitability. In terms of added value, data provides the ability to make evidence-based decisions, looking at research, design, and value-added applications with products and service mix. And the time and cost-saving process is through the digitalisation of services that's increased the ability to integrate processes and reduce fraud and error in our systems. Now, supply chain managers are often faced with the daunting and critical task of ensuring that demand is matched with supply in order to maintain business positioning and leverage our consistency and reliability. That is a critical aspect of supply chains, as it's got a negative effect on business, including production costs, long inventory cycles, or hold up in capital costs and stockouts, it's all where demand is higher than supply, and customer dissatisfaction leads to loss of revenue. So if information received, supply chains respond better to demand and supply in the market through product lifecycle planning. So we get feedback from the market that's shared with the product development teams, and products are made to customer requirements, which improves the market acceptance. Sales and operation planning, using data from different aspects in the supply chain, demand forecasted, supply networks, planning reports and competencies. The sales assumptions can be made to support the financial goals. Quarterly objectives and reviews. From a sales perspective, it's clear what role a stakeholder in the supply chain plays to ensure demand is matched with supply. Each team has a clear action point. So matching supply and demand is difficult because demand is rarely completely predictable, and it can result in unpredictable events, whilst supply is often inflexible. Now, key performance indicators enable procurement to evaluate the goals of supply chains. And that's across a number of factors. They may relate to products or services or operational performance. It can help an organisation to monitor actual performance against planned performance in a supply chain. But traditionally, KPIs have focused on financial measures, but modern global supply chains benefit from broader perspectives. So examples like strategic, tactical, or operational business processes perspectives, and the common ones will be things like fill rates, which measures the percentage of orders demanded by customers that are serviced using available inventory without sales being lost or the need for back orders. You've got the order fill measure, the proportion of orders that are delivered as required on the first attempt without a substitution or a back order. Line fill rate measures the number of orders that are satisfied on the first attempt compared to the number of order lines requested by the customer. And the unit fill measure is the ratio of units or items that are shipped and delivered to the total number ordered or requested by the customer. Cash-to-cash cycle time measures the time from when an organisation pays to purchase order of raw materials from the time the organisation is paid by its customer. And the inventory days of supply indicates the amount of time inventory is likely to be lost before it's necessary to replace another one to order it. The use of technology to communicate supply chain data requires an emphasis on the quality of data being used for that decision making. So procurement needs to be confident in the integrity of the data within that system to make independent decisions on supply chain risks and demand. And supply tech trends need to be revealed through the analysis of data. Now, integration tools can be used to clean data communicated from various supply chain systems and enable procurement to access, deliver, and use data within their processes. So the integration of supply chain data can be supported by technology that's identified by Blair, which includes things like tightly coupled systems integrations, an application program interface, an API that requests data from various systems, including your CRM, your SCM, your HRIS, accounting software like ERP, and the API makes the request and transports the response and translates it for reporting purposes. You've got the SOA, which is a service-orientated architecture. That's a loose coupling, ensuring that a change in one function system does not necessarily directly affect another. So it doesn't require a compatible format. The ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, enables large integration tasks throughout the supply chain using a customized central hub. That helps connect distinct systems and applications to enable them to communicate with each other. It's a middleware application which helps to integrate legacy systems and communicate supply chain data from various components, regardless of location or complexity in the technology involved. Or an iPaaS, which is an integrated performance platform as a service. A cloud-based tool that uses web protocols to manage the integration of ad hoc applications. So something that's a kind of lightweight connector from a business to business. It integrates the data flows. And then the last one is XML, Extensible Markup Language, a structured computer programming language that enables e-commerce through integration of different applications. It means that different technologies and data types and formats all use the same programming language. So you can exchange information, removing the cost of communicating between different platforms. So the focus of procurement is on developing quality business processes that improve the flow of data, proactively managing data tailored to your global supply chain. That can include transactional data which resides in various systems that connect your organization in the supply chain using something called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange, and Enterprise Resource Planning, ERP. That could be used within the organization and data from external sources. So EDI, these link suppliers and buyers through a private network referred to as the EDI. That can automate procurement processes like inventory replenishments, and it's beneficial in managing high volumes of transactions with numbers of suppliers. And your ERP is a business process software integrating the supply chain's financial and operational system activities. Now, huge volumes of data have been communicated across a global complex supply chain, and therefore measures need to be adopted which will enable the procurement professional to assess, manage, and understand the data available. So here are some of the basic communication technologies. You've got satellite, which is a geostationary satellite that provides the means of people in different locations accessing stuff to communicate, like mobile phones. I mean, when you come onto mobile telecommunications, obviously that's been a little bit more complicated when it comes to handheld devices. But the revolution of mobile communication provides internet and email access, which means people can remain in contact with offices and allow customers to sign for goods using electronic devices. Barcodes are widely used throughout the supply chain. They can enable the identification and tracking of goods at every stage of the supply chain process. A more modern version of barcodes is RFID, radio frequency identification. Devices are tagged with a chip that has a read-write capability, allowing it to communicate through the supply chain using radio frequency. And order processing is when you're placing orders, you get visibility of things like stock availability and replenishment time, which enables you to be more accurate in your delivery schedules with your customers. Now, the complex global environment of supply chain management is one of changing demands and difficulty in creating effective operations. So procurement needs to develop a strategy for the supply chain network to create a complete and integrated system. Now, many of the strategies for systems integration have their background in manufacturing. Baker identified 4 system integration strategies that can be utilised. You've got your direct product profitability, DPP. This allows the appropriate cost and allowances of a particular product, distribution costs, storage, transport, etc. So the actual costs are monitored and compared to standard costs to identify any inefficiencies. And it also contributes to marketing and pricing strategies. MRP, Material Requirement Planning, a sophisticated computer planning tool that ensures raw materials and work in progress are available when and where they're needed. The DRP is a distribution requirement planning. That means inventories and material flows to the distribution network to manage products through the system and ensure they're in the right place at the right time. And just in time, JIT, this has implications for distribution and logistics because it provides a system that removes any non-value adding activities to produce goods to the customer when they want them. Now, the priority that an organisation places on the different performance objectives to measure that supply chain performance is going to vary depending on the organisation's strategy and market position of their product or service mix. There is not a set best practice performance objective, but the right performance objectives need to be there to deliver the strategic objectives of the organisation. The success or failure of performance measure frameworks are going to depend on your supportive characteristics. So it's necessary to consider whether the measures chosen are pertinent to all aspects of the supply chain or whether they're universal regardless of their context. The purposeful, is the performance measurement framework contributing to the achievement of your overall strategic objective? And is it being widely accepted? So not only do the measures need to be right and measurable, they also need to be supported as relevant and meaningful at all levels within an organisation. Now, safety performance objectives focus on internal measures of internal learning and growth. This relates to physical risks and dangers to health and the environment that exist within a supply chain. Now, in the supply chain, there are different international and national rules and regulations regarding safety management system, safe and effective product handling and storage, as well as mandatory health and safety guidelines. Now, one of the most difficult aspects of managing safety in that global supply chain is the existence of imperfect information. But they should include financial safety, so an organisation itself facing catastrophic financial jeopardy, which leads to collapse, physical safety, which is about hazards and things that might damage the physical environment, technological safety, the risk of cybercrime, or reputational safety due to malpractice or poor customer experience. So it's important to continuously evaluate your supply chain operations in your organisation. And that's as a way to ensure that any insufficiencies of operational management are removed and improvements are made on an ongoing basis. Now, the different types of benchmarking, firstly is internal, where you compare your operations on the same supply chain to evaluate how each operation performs. External benchmarking, where you compare yourself against another organisation. Performance or competitive benchmarking is where there is a direct competitor, someone in the same market having the same customer. Compare your supply chains against the other. Strategic benchmarking is where your organisation compares effectiveness of your long-term strategies or your core capabilities. And then process benchmarking is where you compare best operating processes and standards against other supply chains. And international benchmarking is looking for the best global supply chain practice. And that can be anywhere in the world. So we're now going to look at the major facility location factors. These are the things that are going to affect, I suppose, where an organisation might place its operations. And determining the right number of facilities and locations requires procurement to make decisions regarding location, relocation, and expansion of operations within your supply chain. So the location decisions can be ranked at 4 levels. Which ones are pivotal, vital, important, or secondary? But they all outline the following as major facility factor locations, such as access to markets and distribution centres, access to supplies and resources, or community and government access, any competitive considerations or environmental factors, labour, tax, financing, as well as transport and utility services. And you can plot these and rank these depending on, as I said earlier, which one's pivotal, vital, important, or secondary. So this is just a general ranking of your location factors. It's not necessarily applying to every organisation, but some might say, worker productivity and access to skilled workers and transport are absolutely pivotal. But maybe, personal income tax structure or proximity to other company facilities is fairly secondary. Now, a steady flow of items through the supply chain network reduces inventory and creates an integrated flow of items through that network. So sourcing analysis assesses the different patterns of items flowing using sophisticated mathematical methods that calculate the optimum flow of items and the number of distribution centres needed to serve that operational system. But do remember, a supply chain network already exists. So optimal results need to be compromised as a result of legacy systems and structures. So the steps to optimise the flow through the supply chain starts with the supply chain options. So you're going to examine the number of facilities and options and analyse your competitors to determine ranking being pivotal, vital, important, or secondary. And they're relevant to the flow of inputs through your network. And identify current problems that are interrupting the flow or inputs or creating bottlenecks. The second is the options analysis. Consider future-proofing, facilities and node costs or different locations, and the supply chain modelling approach to be adopted. Try and analyse cost and compare options. And then you go off and develop your business case. Consider the future-proofing of that facility and the node costs or the different locations, and any supply chain modelling approach that you need to adopt to analyse costs and compare those options. Then develop your business case, evaluating preferred options against your supply and procurement strategy, which doesn't need to include your risk analysis, your stakeholder analysis, return on investment, and any practical considerations for the implementation phase. You're then going to need your stakeholder sign-off. So communicate with stakeholders, including your senior managers, to gain sign-off of supply chain network operations. Moving into planning and implementation, develop, resource and action a project plan. Consider your labour requirements or the development of your supply chain relationships and the development of any physical elements of your supply chain, including sourcing, location, facilities and transport. Managing disruption to the supply chain flows of any items using transition or during those transition periods. So the final stage is monitor, control and evaluation. So here you'll monitor the execution of the implementation of your supply chain network operation and the flow of the items to identify any interruptions, ensuring that changes made have been smoothed, and especially when it comes to the flow of inputs. and then evaluate supply chain redesign to compare the reality against the business case and determine whether the changes made are delivering the anticipated return on investment. Now, categorising our supply chain risks. Let's look at the different types, actually. Let's look at some internal risks within the organisation. So, arguably, they're a little bit easier to control. There could be things like disruptions or failures in the internal process, like late deliveries or personnel issues. Improper flow of sharing of information, or inadequate planning or lack of contingencies. The external risks within the supply chain are driven by factors external to your organisation, such as issues with customer demand or supplier risks and failures. Environmental factors relating to your economic, social, political or legal environmental, all within the business operations. The physical factors like natural disasters, I suppose, as well. But there are 5 steps required to identify global supply chain risks. Firstly, carry out that supply chain risk assessment, identify the risks and evaluate the consequences and put the strategies in place to alleviate them. Then define the supply chain process. Examine and understand the entire supply chain with a focus on key processes, personnel and resources that are required. Third, you categorise the aspects of that process. Separate the different aspects of the process into parts or related operations that are interlinked or related. They should be grouped together. Fourth, clarify the specifics, explaining, for example, the functions, the key personnel or the resources. And finally, identify the risks that are likely to occur in each operation. Review each operation thoroughly and record the possible risk. Then you categorise that risk in terms of likelihood of occurrence and severity of the risk or impact. This is going to inform your mitigation efforts. And there are 4 ways of managing supply chain risks. This is known as the 4 T's. You tolerate or accept a risk. Treat a risk, put into place contingency plans to mitigate that risk. Transfer a risk or share it. Or terminate to avoid high risks with severe consequences. Now, business process re-engineering was introduced by Michael Hammer in the 1990s. It's a radical redesign of core supply chain processes to improve productivity, cycle times, and quality. It often entails restructuring or getting rid of processes that are either unnecessary or cause waste, and focuses on the best work. So examples of business process re-engineering include redesigning the ordering of food at fast food restaurants, such as introduction of customer self-ordering points at McDonald's. It requires radical rethinking, dramatic improvements. This short fat processes, which is a process that allows more functions to run the process, shortening the length of time from start to finish. So you're developing this short fat process rather than a long thin one, which is where there are few actors involved and everything runs in a linear fashion. And the final thing you need is control and action. Now, Fisher argued that poor supply chain performance is a result of poor relationships between our supply chain partners and promotional practices that are causing dysfunction in industry. And that's because of the inability to match supply and demand, resulting in supply chains that have either got excess supply while there is a shortage of supply compared to demand in others. And uncertainty is a common aspect of the demand from a customer as well as the supply chain. So you end up with demand uncertainty or supply uncertainty. So demand uncertainty is a situation where organisation is unable to ascertain the future demand of the product due to fluctuating demand affecting production accuracy. And they arise because of the quantities that are ordered by customers or the variety of the products, the price expectations and innovation demand. And then the supply uncertainty is the existence of risks in the supply chain which may interrupt the global supply chain network at any point. The supply uncertainty makes it very difficult to predict with accuracy. And with that, when output levels cannot be predicted, you end up with poor quality or limited or inflexible supply capacity or an evolving production process. So demand uncertainty is low for functional products that have long life cycles and very high for innovative products that have short life cycles. So supply uncertainty is low when supply is stable. And this is when technology and manufacturing processes have evolved to maturity and the relationships are well established. Now, based on the 4 dimension of functional products, innovative products, stable supply or evolving supply products can be categorized into one of the 4 groups. Each product categorization represents a target market requiring different types of strategies based on the level of uncertainty. So your product types are either functional or innovative, and the process type is either stable or evolving. So to give you a few examples, a stable functional thing are groceries, stable innovation is new fashion, evolving functional is different ways to power our homes using solar and wind, or something that's evolving and innovative might be augmented reality and smartphones. So it's important to understand customer demands and the extent of the supply chain uncertainty for each segment. So the specific needs of customers need to be understood. And the combination of these aspects define the overall customer demand. So the quantity of products demanded, how much does the customer order? Do they order in large quantities? Do they vary? Do some segments purchase larger while other segments purchase smaller? The response times the customer will endure. Now, what is the desired response time? What is the longest? What's the shortest? What's the customer willing to accept? Some segments may demand fast response times, and others are happy to accept longer. The variety of products needed. What is the different combination of products needed? Do they vary over time? And the service level required. Again, that could vary over time. One segment might have very high expectations, others satisfied with a lower. The product or the service price, what's the customer willing to pay? Is that willingness to pay a different price likely to change over time? Because some segments don't mind paying high prices and others want to pay as little as possible. And then the desired degree of innovation, to what extent is innovation required by customers? Are they comfortable with the innovation levels in the market? Now, customer requirements need to be met regarding any desired service levels. So these requirements are expressed in terms of service quality dimensions. While all dimensions are important, some are more important than others. So service providers need to be aware of the level of importance attached to each of these dimensions. So the tangibles, this is about the appearance. Much as a service is only felt or experienced through the physical dimensions like decorations and layouts and colours. So it's important as it can be an indicator of service quality. Reliability is what customers come to expect. They want you to do as you promised. And customers need to be confident that they can rely on you as a service provider. Providers need to always ensure that they perform or deliver as promised. And responsiveness is the ability to respond quickly to those demands and the marketplace changes. Assurance is the ability for staff to convey knowledge, courtesy, and confidence, as well as honesty to their customers. And empathy is having that ability to be caring towards your customers and offer some form of individualized care. But supply chains need to be responsive and efficient in order to realize improved quality, flexibility, dependability, speed, as well as the reduced costs. So the following are qualities of a responsive supply chain. The accurate order fulfillment is the ability to meet customer orders accurately, to avoid costs associated with replacing or reworking. Flexibility, the ability to anticipate change in demand and be prepared to meet them. Open lines of communication, to provide the right information to provide a timely response to changes in customer requirements or the market environment. And customer satisfaction, able to meet customer needs regardless of changes in the market or customer preferences. So, what are the qualities of an efficient supply chain? We want process optimization, to reduce costs and minimize waste. We want to engage with quality business partners. They should be high performers because this translates into better and cheaper processes of the organization. Effective management of inventory to avoid the cost related to too much inventory or stockouts. Customer satisfaction, customers are able to enjoy good prices due to low costs and faster processes. And what the supply chain is designed to do well is going to depend on the context in which it operates. Some supply chains will focus on increasing speed or compressing lead times, but organizations with slim profit margins will want supply chains that can deliver a cost-efficient solution that protects the organization's profitability. Now, two aspects, a company's competitive strategy and a supply chain strategy or design, have to be harmonized in order to be successful. So the competitive strategy of an organization defines specific sets of customer needs. So it's important that supply chains achieve a strategic fit, matching resources and capabilities in the supply chain to the external operation of that supply chain or business strategy. And you do this by understanding customer needs, understanding supply chain attributes, and achieving that strategic fit. Now, the McKinsey 7S framework can be used to support a restructure of the supply chain, incorporating 7 interdependent variables. Strategy. The strategic plan outlines how supply chains will achieve a competitive advantage. The structure. How's the supply chain structured in terms of reporting lines and tiering and partners? Systems. How do you engage in your daily tasks using technology, processes, and procedures? Shared values. These are referred to as superordinate goals that encompass the core values of the supply chain, identified through the corporate culture and approach to work. The styles is the type of management and leadership adopted, which affects the level of empowerment and the way in which authority and power is distributed. The staff are the individuals working in the supply chain and the capable resources available to execute your plans. And finally, skills. The actual skills and knowledge and competencies of people working within the supply chain. Now, deregulation and the increase of sophisticated digital technology has enabled organizations to expand the boundaries of their operations across borders, providing more options for customers whilst competing in challenging global markets. And globalisation increases uncertainty due to the increased need to customise products and services based on the target. Changing customer demands due to geographical locations. But there are some factors that complicate our global sourcing decisions, like hidden costs, cross-border freight and handling fees, the issues with managing complex inventory holding and handling needs of an extended cross-national supply chain, additional admin, including translation services, and multiple regulatory requirements. But Oakden's key dimensions of increased uncertainty talks about geographic offshoring or sourcing, which produces increased reliance on supply partners. It requires remote management, which brings its own difficulties. The breadth in terms of managing multiple partners across multiple regions, again, increases complexities and opportunities for problems to occur. And depth, servicing different regions requires the organisation to invest in increased levels of product differentiation. And that requires the organisation to invest in new segments, planning to make and deliver products and services across the borders, reducing control for the procurement professional, but increasing the tiers as they go through the supply partner. So resource becoming strategic, if you've got the following properties, I suppose: the scarcity, the immovability, and the originality. A different combination of supply chain activities produce different levels of return for an organisation. The cost responsiveness frontier provides a visual representation of the best options available for the supply chain to produce the optimum levels of customer responsiveness and productivity. It's based on modern supply chain management theory, mapping the cost responsiveness to the supply chain theory. So you can develop an understanding of the supply chain attributes in order to focus attention on how to best structure your supply chain. So this cost responsiveness frontier is a concept in supply chain management that states that supply chain is responsive when it delivers the highest perceived value for a given productivity. But the responsiveness spectrum is a key challenge for supply chains because you're trying to attain a balance between responsiveness and efficiency. And that's a delicate balance and not always easy to achieve. I suppose it's because both perspectives influence one another. So, for example, to improve response times, you might need to invest in more systems. This investment is costly, whilst increasing costs with the possibility of hindering efficiency. That implies that improving responsiveness may hinder efficiency. Now, some supply chains are designed especially to be highly efficient. Others are designed to be highly responsive. So highly efficient supply chains focus on low-cost operations, while highly responsive supply chains focus on quick response to customer needs. So, for example, steel factories are generally highly efficient, while companies producing high-end fashion clothes are highly responsive. So it's important to note that some companies fall between the two extremes of being highly responsive or efficient. They're either somewhat efficient or responsive. So these could include non-fashionable clothes like basic clothes for your somewhat efficient supply chains, and the somewhat responsive supply chain could be a vehicle manufacturing firm. And then we need to think about the product variety and life cycles. So I think here it's a challenge really in achieving and maintaining that strategic fit, because customers are increasingly demanding more variety in products or service offering by organisations. And that implies that companies are under pressure to increase the variety of products in order to increase capacity, distribution options, or inventory levels. And the life cycle is the stage of a product that it goes through from the initial concept through to decline or removal from the market. And the product variety is the variety of products provided to satisfy a diverse consumer base and customer segment. Globalisation has several implications for supply chains. These implications mean that markets are further apart and supply sources may be located far away, and the threat of uncertainty is high. And due to the fact that customers are spread all over the world, companies have to invest in some technology platforms to maintain connections with them. And globalisation increases uncertainty due to increased need to customise our products based on target customer segments. And the external forces that provide a significant challenge in maintaining uncertainty across our global supply chains come from sort of three key dimensions. Geographic, the trend of global business to send supply sourcing and production offshore or to low-cost countries, and the increased reliance on supply partners. The breadth is managing supply partners across the regions and the complexity and the problems that occurs. It opens it up to political and economical forces and decisions or geopolitical disruptions like trade agreements or barriers to trade. And then the depth is servicing different regions that are required for the organisation to invest in different levels of production or differentiation in their products or service mix. And supply chains have become more fragmented and complex. And this is because many companies have outsourced non-core functions like their call centres and distribution services, and it allows them to focus on more core activities that enhance customer service. But the fragmentation of supply chain implies that many other parties have come into our supply chain, making it more complex because there are more layers to respond to handling our customer needs. So here's just a few winners in free global trade, but there's a controversy that arises from fragmentation, such as income gains, because although fragmentation promotes trade, the income distribution heavily favours the outsourcing country. Employment gains, although the country that carries out the outsourcing activity benefit from employment gains, the outsourcing country of the organisation may suffer from increased levels of unemployment. Human rights, it comes from things like child labour and any other recognised problems for low-cost country markets due to lack of decent work conditions, limited protection and access to basic services. Sustainability, habitat destruction and pollution occurs in countries which have fewer environmental protections or regulations than the outsourcing country. And that increased level of pressure from environmental groups means that organisations are now being held account in respect of environmental sustainability in their supply chains. But this has not always been the case. You've got the exploitation of mineral wealth. The existence of global supply chains means that the link between mineral resources and the prosperity of a country is not guaranteed. So commercial exploitation not only robs a country of its wealth, but can result in life-threatening hazards for the local community. And then you've got fraud, with the issue of traceability and transparency in complex fragmented supply chains increases the opportunity for fraud to occur, which affects health and safety and consumer protection as a result of contamination or dangerous counterfeits. Now, acting responsively towards the environment is a key element of corporate social responsibility. Now, the areas to consider in terms of sustainability in the supply chain starts with the efficient use of resources. Consider the impact on the environment of extracting those raw materials, like the minerals, the metal or the timber, or the impact of mining and logging in the environment. and how demand for raw materials can be reduced or eliminated from supply chains, and how resources can be managed and used effectively and efficiently to avoid unnecessary waste. So lean production focuses on the elimination of waste. The second, reduce pollution and waste. Consider the consequences of sourcing raw materials, production and manufacturing processes in terms of waste and pollution potential. And you take steps to manage harmful waste and pollution that result from supply chain activities. And lastly, energy efficiency. Supply chain processes, logistics and transport all require large levels of energy usage. Electricity in a manufacturing process, or the use of oil and gas in your transportation. And the use of fossil fuels has a significant impact on the environment. So changing fuel to clean energy and increased efficiency is necessary to reduce energy usage. And that's the end of Learning Outcome 4. Thank you for watching.